Okay, yeah. So the next thing, this was one of Trevor's ideas. Basically, we're going to talk about the big four, and we're going to discuss whether the big four, is really necessary anymore. Basically, with the fact that Slayer retired and are not, well, technically not part of the big four anymore. So basically, let's have a discussion and see whether we think that the big four is really necessary anymore, and if that's the case, who we think should remake the big four. So anyone want to start on this? Cody?
Yeah, I'll start. I think, of course, we should still care about the big four. It's one of those things, like if you're talking about sports, you're going to care about who are the biggest names in that whatever genre you're speaking about. So, of course, we're going to care about who the big four are in thrash metal, in death metal, in black metal, and things like that, because we want, this sort of validation of, yes, your opinion's correct, that this band is one of the best. So I think it's just one of those things that's good for discussion, kind of like what we're doing now. We're discussing these different things. What's the big four? We're literally about to have a discussion on it. So I think it's important, and I think that we should care about it.
Yeah.
See ya.
See you, Dylan.
Right, so.
See you, Dylan.
Cheers. Yeah, I think that's fair.
That is a great point.
Yeah. Anyone else?
No.
No.
I don't think they're relevant anymore. They were relevant back then when thrash was coming out and it was a scene, and yeah, they were the biggest at the time. But yeah, everybody suddenly comes up and goes, well, yeah, shouldn't Testament have been it? So I don't think. And is thrash really that big these days? There's so many other genres and subgenres.
Mm-hmm.
Are there that many? Do you honestly look at the bands that are the top four and say they're still thrash? Metallica still thrash?
No.
Slayer aren't going anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Anthrax kind of went up and down, didn't they? I guess they're still these days. That I saw them supporting Slayer on the final tour, and they were fucking awesome. Anthrax were very good live, and they still play thrash. But I wasn't a fan of the John Bush stuff, so I don't know. Is talking about a top four thrash? I don't know. I don't think it is these days for myself, because I think there's too many genres out there.
Mm-hmm.
Back when there wasn't the internet and all that sort of stuff, and you wanted to know what the big bands were. Now you can find any bands, and I don't think it's relevant for myself. I don't think that a thrash big four are relevant anymore. As I said, obviously Megadeth are the other one, and they're actually the last album was good, but some of the others weren't. I must admit, I'm not a big fan of. I don't like his whiny voice, to be honest, but I quite like the last Megadeth album. So, but yeah, no, I don't think as a genre, I think there's too much out there, and why I said with the Death Doom, people still talk about the Peaceful Three, don't they? It's your Paradise Lost,
My Dying Bride.
Is it Anathema? The other one, maybe?
I think
the other one that was on Peaceful, or Anathema, or whatever you want to call them. Anathema, I call them. As I said, people still talk about that, but as a genre, the Death Doom, but they don't with others. Do people talk about a big four in just Doom? And obviously you've got your black metal, but I don't know. I don't think it's relevant for myself. So that's my.
Okay.
Yeah. For me personally, like the big four is a generation thing. It was something that came out in the end of the 80s. I don't know when they started saying it first, but it's just like John said with the Peaceful Tree. You're talking old school history, like Black Sabbath, originators of Doom, Metallica, and them were the big four back in the 80s. They're not now. There's no need for it now. If you went to pick a big four in the thrash metal scene now, would any of those be still in it? Do you know what I mean? Should there have been other bands in it prior better than them? It's just the Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and Slayer were seen as the big guys then because they were the boys that were selling records. They were the most well-distributed records. They were the big four then, like, you know. But should Exodus's first album is far better than any of the fucking shit that any of them bands released, and they weren't in the big four, if you know what I mean. So I just think it's a generation. I think it's just a generation thing, the big four. Like you can't keep those four bands in a big four now. That was back in the day. You know, it's silly having the trash big four when most of them aren't even playing trash or most of them aren't even fucking playing.
Agreed.
So,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's an old school saying, like, you know, the big four. That's history. You know.
Yeah.
You know. Do anybody talk about the big four still, like, apart from us?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. I'll get to that.
You know. Yeah, the big four should be your four big fucking favorites or people that you think should be in it.
We got another beer.
In fact, the Testament whenever in a big four, like, it's just a fucking joke for starters. But yeah, do you know what I mean? I just think it's an old school fucking thing, the big four, like, you know, like Metallica probably come out of that big four after the Black Album, before the Black Album, like, you know, so there you go. That's me.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But you know what I mean?
Will I go next? Trev, if you want to go, because this is your thing as well. I'll go next. So, yeah, personally, I don't think that the big four is like that necessary anymore. Because, like, well, for a start, even though I do agree with what Codi said, because you have to kind of respect them bands, you know, for what they did. But nowadays, because there's so many other bands, you know, from around that time that are just as big as the majority of them now, like, you kind of have to, you know, and then they have like that big 8 as well, put in like Death Angel, Testament, Exodus, and Overkill in there as well. So you can't really leave any of them bands out anymore because they're all, you know, they're all pretty big. And to be fair, I actually remember I watched a video not that long ago. Can't remember the name of the channel who it was, but basically the guy went through all these like thrash bands, you know, and he said like how many sales have they got, and quite interestingly, some of the bands that were not in the big four actually had more sales than Anthrax, who are in the big four. I was thinking, well, how's that possible? You know, I guess it's because back in the day they were bigger than they are now, I guess. But so I was thinking that, like, if they were to remake the big four, would they do it based on album sales now? And I was kind of thinking that. I'm thinking maybe they might, especially the fact that Slayer are retired now. They can't really be in like the big four. Maybe the classic big four. Maybe we should just leave it as that. The classic big four bands were Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica. But then, like, you know, you could easily make like big fours in other genres. You know, like big four of American death metal, and, you know, the big four of UK thrash metal, and, you know, like what John said earlier, the big four of Death Doom as well. You know, we can kind of have like our big four of each, but not have a definitive big four. I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Trevor, go for it.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll tap into this. I'll give my sort of thing on it, and then my phone's pretty much about to fucking die.
Okay.
So the whole thing about the big four for me is, yes, there's relevancy with it, like Codi said, because they are the 4 big bands. Because if someone says to me or says to you, maybe you look at it differently than I do. Someone's like, hey, well, what's the big what bands did you mention that are thrash bands that I can get into? Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Do they play that now? No, not necessarily. Slayer's retired. Megadeth put out a semi-thrash record. Metallica hasn't played a fucking thrash record since the early days, and Anthrax, yeah. So like they really haven't done it proper. I mean, Roger has a pretty good point, but I wouldn't put Creator in there. And I really don't have much nice to say about fucking Millie, anyways, because Millie thinks he's above fucking the German Big Four himself. I would have Testament, Overkill, Exodus, and Death Angel, but I don't at the same time, because can their biggest records overtake the big records from the other bands? No. I think the Big Four essentially was generated by some fucking goonhead that was selling records. Call me kooky, call me wacky, but that's why the Big Four is still a thing. You still got to talk about them because someone's bound to ask you, well, if you're into thrash, what would you say if I want to get into them? That's where the relevancy comes from, because you still have to get, and because you don't want to just send them into fucking Sodom. I mean, I would, because I love Sodom, but some kids can be like, oh, I don't know. Those vocals are scary. Well, okay, well then go listen to a Metallica or Megadeth record, and you might be okay. A Slayer thing. Not everybody's going to get into Tom Araya's voice and be happy with it. Us probably would, yes. But again, they're retired. Metallica hasn't wrote a thrash record in years. Anthrax doesn't play thrash anymore. And then Megadeth, well, the new one was good, but Dave's voice is shit, but he knows that himself. Can you make a Big Four death metal? Absolutely. But are you talking old school death metal? Tech death, brutal death, slam, blah, blah, fucking blah. There are so many other genres, like Johnny Mac said. You can make Big Fours of all that as well. But in terms of relevancy now, I don't think the Big Thrash Four is as relevant, but they're still relevant because of the fact that you can introduce people to them. But you can never essentially break up the Big Four because of the album sales. Because there's no fucking way that an Exodus record is going to be better than any of Metallica's big records, or are they more thrash? 1,000%. Is Testament more thrash? 1,000%. Is Death Angel more thrash? 1,000%. I would probably be more quicker to pull out Metallica and Anthrax and put one of the other two in there, probably Testament and Exodus. But that's kind of the thing about the Big Four. They're relevant, but they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's like a legacy kind of thing. I think Simon said it. Where is it? Here we go. It's a legacy
label. That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It's almost like the Big Four is like a legacy of what was.
They were the first. They were the first to do that stuff and get popular. The other bands were there,
mm-hmm.
but them four bands got fucking popular very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Sure, why not?